The forest was blanketed in thick snow, the trees standing like silent sentinels. Everything seemed still, almost too still. Then, through the frozen white, a little girl spotted a terrifying sight. A police officer lying motionless, half buried in snow, and beside her, a huge canine dog, Shadow, tense and alert. Yet unable to move her, the child's heart pounded. She had never faced anything like this before. The officer's shallow breaths and the dog's protective growls told her that danger and death were closer than she realized. The forest was remote. No one could hear them. Every moment mattered. Gathering courage she didn't know she had, the little girl stepped forward, tiny hands outstretched, voice shaking. In that instant, a life-or-death struggle began, one that would test her bravery, reveal the loyalty of a K9, and show how even the smallest hero can change everything. Before we continue, hit like, share, and subscribe. This story will break your heart. The forest was silent, blanketed in a thick layer of snow that glistened under the pale morning light. Each tree stood like a frozen sentinel, their bare branches weighed down by white powder. The air was sharp, crisp, biting at the little exposed skin of anyone who dared step into its depths. Lieutenant Emily Carter, a seasoned police officer, trudged along the narrow path, her breath forming clouds in the icy air. Beside her, her K9 partner, Shadow, moved with precision, sniffing the ground, ears twitching at every distant sound. Shadow's coat was thick and warm, a mix of black and tan that blended perfectly against the forest floor, yet his eyes were sharp, scanning every movement. This part of the forest was dangerous. Isolated and remote, it was known for its sudden drifts, icy patches, and treacherous hidden terrain. Emily had been called in to investigate reports of illegal activity, poachers, suspicious vehicles, or lost hikers. Every mission carried risks, but she trusted Shadow implicitly. The dog had saved her life more times than she could count. Reading situations with instincts humans could never hope to match, they moved carefully, stepping over snow-laden branches, the crunch of their movement loud in the eerie stillness. The trees created long shadows that danced on the ground, twisting and stretching as the morning sun tried to pierce the canopy. Something about this place felt heavier than usual, as if the snow itself carried secrets beneath its frozen surface. Shadow paused, nose to the ground, ears stiff. Emily stopped too, sensing the dog's alertness. Her hand brushed against her radio, ready to call for backup, but she hesitated. Here, in the middle of the snowy forest, it was just her dog, and the unknown waiting ahead. Emily had barely taken another step when the snow beneath her shifted unexpectedly. Her foot sank into a hidden drift, and she stumbled, barely catching herself on a nearby tree. Shadow barked sharply, circling, growling low, sensing a change in the forest's rhythm. Emily tried to move forward, but a sudden sharp pain tore through her leg. She collapsed to the ground, the cold snow pressing against her cheek. Her breath came in quick, shallow gasps. She could feel the blood slowly seeping from a cut on her arm, but worse was the pain radiating from her ankle. Her radio slipped from her grip, buried partially in the snow. Shadow whined, his ears pinned back, pacing nervously around her, his instincts screaming danger. "Stay calm, boy. Stay calm," Emily murmured, forcing herself to focus. She knew she couldn't panic. Shadow needed her steady presence. The dog nudged her hand, whining softly, as if urging her to move, to get up. She tried, but her ankle gave way again. A sudden gust of icy wind swept through the trees, rustling the branches above. Snow fell in small cascades, blurring her vision. Emily realized she wasn't just injured. She was trapped, in the middle of a remote forest, with no immediate way to call for help. Shadow pressed closer, his body shielding her from the wind, his sharp eyes scanning the surrounding trees. Every second mattered. The forest, beautiful and silent moments ago, had become a cold trap. Emily's pulse quickened, and she knew that if they didn't act fast, the snow and the isolation could turn this accident into a nightmare. The crunch of snow echoed faintly in the distance, barely noticeable over the whine of the wind. Then, a soft, light sound, different from the forest, small footsteps, hurried but careful. Emily's eyes squinted through the snow, trying to make out the figure approaching. Her vision blurred, but it wasn't another officer or a hiker. It was a child that a little girl, no older than 6, came into view, her small boots sinking slightly into the fresh snow. She wore a light pink dress, and her hair bounced with every step. She seemed oblivious to the cold, the danger, or the wind that cut through the forest like knives. Emily's heart skipped a beat. In a situation already tense, the girl's presence added an unpredictable element. Shadow growled low, the sound rumbling from deep within his chest. His eyes locked on the child as he positioned himself between Emily and the approaching figure. Emily lifted a trembling hand. "No, stay back," she shouted, her voice cracking from pain and urgency. The girl paused, looking curiously at the dog and the woman lying in the snow. Her wide eyes reflected both fear and determination. She didn't seem to fully understand the danger, but something inside her urged her forward. "Please, help," the girl said softly, voice carrying across the frozen forest. The little girl had stumbled into a world she shouldn't have been in, but she might also be the only one capable of changing what came next. The little girl stopped a few feet away, frozen by what she saw. Emily lay half buried in the snow, her uniform streaked with frost and dirt. Her breathing was shallow, and her eyes fluttered as she tried to stay conscious. Shadow crouched protectively over her, his fur bristling, teeth bared, ready to defend against any perceived threat. The child's small hand trembled as she took a hesitant step closer. "Miss, are you okay?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. The wind carried her words, but the silence of the forest made them echo unnaturally. Shadow's growl deepened, warning her to stay back. Emily stirred slightly, a pained groan escaping her lips. The sight of the little girl made her heart ache even more. She wanted to warn the child, but her own strength was failing. "Go back, please," she murmured weakly, fingers barely moving. The girl hesitated, confusion and fear in her eyes. She hadn't expected to find anyone, especially not a person in such danger. But she couldn't just turn and leave. Something inside her demanded she act. Shadow's eyes remained locked on the girl, following every movement. Emily tried to reassure the dog. "It's okay, boy. She's not here to hurt us," she whispered, struggling to keep her voice steady. The dog's growling softened just slightly, a flicker of recognition passing over his amber eyes. The forest felt impossibly vast, and the snow pressed cold against Emily's skin. Every second mattered. She knew the little girl didn't yet understand the danger. Not from the forest, not from the snow, and not from the frozen terrain that could claim them all if help didn't arrive. And yet, the child had taken the first brave step into a world of fear and uncertainty, unknowingly setting in motion a chain of events that could save both lives. The little girl stood frozen, her wide eyes scanning the frozen scene before her. Emily's body shivered violently from the cold, snow melting into her uniform and soaking her hair. Shadow pressed close to his handler, growling softly at the child's cautious movements. Every muscle in his body was tense, protective, ready to defend the woman he loved. The girl's mind raced. She realized the officer was unconscious, and the dog was alert but unmoving, a silent guardian over a fallen hero. Her tiny fingers clenched into fists as she weighed her options. There was no one else nearby, no one to call. The forest stretched endlessly behind her, snow hiding dangers she couldn't see. She took a deep breath and approached slowly, staying low. "I am going to help you," she whispered, voice shaking but firm. Shadow barked once, a warning, and the girl froze. She could feel the weight of the dog's eyes, studying her every move. Emily's lips trembled as she tried to speak. "Stay calm, boy," she gasped, her voice barely audible through chattering teeth. Shadow's ears flicked back, tension lingering, but he didn't attack. The girl noticed a subtle shift, a flicker of recognition, perhaps, or a hint that the dog understood she meant no harm. Scanning the scene, the girl quickly assessed the dangers. The snow was deep, and hidden drifts could trap them further. The wind had picked up, making Emily's condition even more critical. Her small heart raced, but she knew she couldn't panic. Carefully, she knelt beside the officer, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. "You're okay, I'll help," she murmured, pressing her jacket over Emily's frozen arms. Shadow circled cautiously, maintaining a protective stance, yet something had changed. He allowed her presence near his fallen handler, The first step toward survival had been taken. The child had assessed the situation, calculated the risks, and accepted the challenge. The frozen forest would not claim these lives without a fight. The little girl's fingers trembled as she reached into her small backpack. Her hands found the radio she had been carrying from home, a gift from her older brother. She had never used it for anything serious, only play or pretend emergencies. But now, she had no choice. Emily's shallow breaths and the snow pressing against her skin left no room for hesitation. She fumbled with the device, pressing buttons nervously. "Hello," she whispered into the microphone. There's a lady. She's hurt. In the forest, near the snowy path by the creek." The words tumbled out, rushed, but urgent. The static crackle was deafening, and her tiny heart raced with each second of silence that followed. Shadow growled low, pacing protectively, his eyes darting toward every shadow and movement in the white expanse. The little girl froze, realizing she had to stay calm, or the dog might see her as a threat again. She took a slow breath and spoke again, voice steadier. "She can't move. The dog's with her. Please send help." The wind picked up, blowing the girl's words away. She pressed the radio closer, hoping someone would hear, hoping someone would respond before it was too late. Every second mattered. Emily's hand twitched slightly, as if sensing the child's efforts. Shadow nudged the girl gently, as though encouraging her. It was a fragile alliance between the three of them, one desperate child, a loyal K9, and an officer clinging to life. Time stretched. The girl whispered prayers into the icy air, hoping for voices, for movement, for anyone who could answer her desperate call. Shadow growled, low and steady, circling the little girl as she crouched near Emily. Every instinct in the dog screamed warning. This was not a stranger who belonged in his territory. His amber eyes locked on her, muscles tense, tail stiff, ready to strike at the slightest threat. The girl froze, hands raised slightly in a gesture of peace. She spoke softly, barely above a whisper. "It's okay, boy. I'm not here to hurt her." Her voice trembled, but there was sincerity in every word. Shadow paused, ears flicking, head tilting ever so slightly as though assessing her intent. Emily's lips moved weakly. "Good boy. Stay," she whispered, barely audible. The dog's growl softened, though his stance remained protective. The girl took a cautious step closer, letting her small hand hover above Shadow's muzzle without touching him. "You're protecting her, aren't you?" she asked gently. Shadow's tail twitched once, a subtle acknowledgement. She smiled faintly, gaining a small measure of confidence. "I'll be careful, I promise." Slowly, she reached into her backpack and pulled out a scarf, wrapping it around Emily's trembling shoulders. Shadow growled again, more softly this time, but didn't move to attack. He sniffed the air, watching the girl, then nudged Emily's hand with his nose, a silent approval. The child's eyes met Shadow's, and in that moment, a fragile trust formed. He allowed her presence, inch by inch, step by step. For the first time in hours, Emily exhaled a shaky breath. The little girl's courage had reached the dog where no human had been able to. Shadow's loyalty and instinct now balanced with reason, guided by the smallest, bravest heart in the forest. Together, they were ready to face the next challenge, united by trust forged in the cold, unforgiving snow. The little girl knelt beside Emily, brushing the snow from her hair and shoulders. Her tiny hands trembled as she worked quickly, wrapping the officer's arms in her jacket to preserve what little warmth remained. The cold was relentless, biting into skin and clothing alike. Every second without action could make the difference between life and death. Emily's teeth chattered violently, her lips pale against the crimson stain where frost had kissed her cheeks. She tried to whisper encouragement, but her voice barely rose above the wind. "Stay calm, Shadow," she gasped, feeling the dog press closer protectively. Shadow lowered his body, eyes alert, keeping a silent watch over both women, as if signaling. "I've got her." The child scanned Emily's face for injuries, noticing a deep cut along her temple and the frostbitten tips of her fingers. Her hands shook, but determination shone through. "We have to keep you warm," she murmured. Carefully, she placed her gloves over Emily's frozen hands. Pressing them gently to restore circulation, snow swirled around them in icy gusts, making it nearly impossible to focus. Yet the girl worked with precision beyond her years. She adjusted Emily's scarf, creating a small barrier against the biting wind, and shifted her body closer to provide additional warmth. Shadow's growls had faded entirely, replaced by a soft whine as he pressed his head against Emily's chest, encouraging her to breathe steadily. The little girl noticed and whispered softly, "It's okay, Shadow. We're helping her." With a deep, shaky breath, Emily tried to move her legs, wincing at the pain, and realized that staying still in the snow was dangerous. The girl nodded, understanding immediately. Together, guided by Shadow's vigilance and her own courage, they prepared for the next step, moving Emily to safety. No matter how perilous the journey through the frozen forest might be, the girl's small hands gripped Emily's coat tightly as she guided her across the snow-covered forest floor. Every step was a struggle. The icy snow threatened to swallow their feet, and hidden drifts lurked beneath, ready to trap them. Shadow padded silently beside them, occasionally nudging Emily or the girl with his nose, alert to every sound and movement around them. Emily groaned with each step, the pain in her ankle worsening. I can't go much further," she whispered, her voice trembling, lips blue from the cold. The girl looked up at her, eyes wide with determination. "Yes, you can," she insisted. "I'll help you. Just follow me." Her small frame moved carefully, deliberately, finding the shallowest snow paths and avoiding tree roots that could trip them. Shadow led the way, sniffing and guiding them around fallen branches and slippery ice. His fur was flecked with snow, and every now and then he glanced back to make sure the girl and Emily were keeping up. The dog's presence was reassuring, a silent protector guiding them through the frozen wilderness. The wind howled through the trees, cutting through layers of clothing and chilling them to the bone. Emily's breathing became shallow, and her vision blurred slightly from frost and fatigue. The girl pressed closer, murmuring words of encouragement, steadying her small hands against the officer's trembling frame. "We're almost there. Just a little further," she whispered. Each step took immense effort, yet neither Emily nor the girl gave up. The forest seemed endless, stretching in all directions under a thick blanket of white. Shadow occasionally barked softly, alerting them to safer passages or hidden obstacles. Hours felt like minutes as the three of them trudged through the snow, connected by trust, courage, and determination. Despite the cold, despite the pain, a bond was forming, one that would carry them through the perilous journey and into the hope of rescue. Finally, in the distance, the faint glimmer of a clearing appeared, a sign that safety might be within reach. The girl's heart surged. "Almost there," she whispered, gripping Emily's coat tighter. Shadow growled softly, sensing the change, and quickened his pace, leading the way forward. The forest seemed endless, each step more treacherous than the last. Snow drifts hidden beneath the surface swallowed the little girl's feet with every move, threatening to pull her down. Fallen branches cracked underfoot, sending sharp echoes through the stillness. Emily's body shivered violently, her ankles swollen and unresponsive to her weak attempts at movement. Shadow's paws crunched over the snow, scanning ahead, alert to every sound, every motion in the white expanse. The wind whipped around them, sending icy needles against exposed skin. The little girl gritted her teeth and pressed forward, lifting Emily slowly while keeping herself balanced. Each step was a struggle against gravity, snow, and the freezing cold. Shadow occasionally nudged Emily's shoulder or the girl's hand, guiding them towards safer paths and away from hidden pitfalls. At one point, the trio came upon a steep incline, the snow slick and treacherous. Emily's breathing grew shallow, and the girl's fingers burned from the cold as she gripped her coat tightly. Shadow stepped ahead, pawing the snow, testing the ground, then circling back to encourage them. The girl whispered, "It's okay. I'm right here. Just follow Shadow." Branches snagged their clothing, forcing the girl to pause, her chest heaving. Every movement required concentration. One misstep could send Emily sliding back into the drift. Shadow barked sharply, startling a nearby bird into flight, the sudden noise amplifying the tension. Hours of trudging had exhausted them. Emily's face was pale, lips blue, her eyes half closed. The girl's determination never faltered, though tears threatened to spill, frozen against her cheeks. Shadow's constant presence, his protective stance, and the occasional nudge reminded them both that they were not alone. Finally, a small clearing appeared in the distance, a faint glimmer of hope through the endless white. The girl tightened her grip on Emily and whispered softly, "We're almost there. Just a little further." Shadow growled low, guiding them, leading the way with unwavering loyalty through the last perilous stretch. Every step now was a victory, a triumph against the unforgiving forest. Shadow moved with precision, his paws cutting through the snow like blades. The little girl followed, her breath visible in frosty clouds, guiding Emily step by step. The dog's ears twitched at every sound, the snap of a branch, the whisper of wind, ready to react instantly. Every instinct he had learned over years of service sharpened as he led them forward. A hidden drift loomed ahead, deep and treacherous. Shadow stopped abruptly, tail stiff, and barked sharply, warning the girl to stop. She froze, heart hammering, and realized she had almost stepped into a concealed trap of snow and ice. Shadow circled, then nudged Emily gently toward a safer path, showing the girl exactly where to place her feet at another point. A low branch blocked their way. Shadow leaped gracefully over it, landing beside the girl, encouraging her to climb over carefully. The dog pressed against Emily, providing balance as she tried to move, his powerful body supporting her frail frame without hesitation. Suddenly, a loose pile of snow slid from above, threatening to bury Emily further. Shadow barked and lunged forward, positioning himself to shield her from the falling snow. He growled low, warning unseen dangers, and his eyes scanned the surroundings, constantly calculating risk. The little girl's fear was palpable, but Shadow's calm and protective presence reassured her. "It's okay, Shadow. We can do this," she whispered, gripping Emily's coat tighter. The dog responded with a soft whine, nudging them onward, guiding them through the most perilous stretches of the frozen forest. Every move, every nudge, every protective stance showcased Shadow's heroism. He wasn't just a dog. He was a soldier, a guardian, and a partner who refused to let anyone harm those he loved. The girl and Emily, though exhausted, felt the reassurance of his presence. With Shadow leading the way, hope surged in their hearts, and the end of the treacherous journey finally came into view. The clearing that had once promised hope now felt distant, almost unreachable. Emily's breathing was shallow, each inhale a sharp stab of pain through her swollen ankle. Her body shivered uncontrollably, frost forming on her eyelashes and eyebrows. The little girl's arms ached from supporting her, but she refused to give in. Every step felt heavier, the snow deeper, the wind harsher. Shadow padded close, nose to Emily's shoulder, eyes searching, ears alert. His protective instincts sharpened with each moment. He nudged Emily gently, sensing her fatigue, urging her forward. The little girl followed his lead, every nerve tense, heart pounding, fear creeping into her small frame. She whispered words of encouragement, though her own voice quivered. We can do this." Almost there. The terrain became treacherous. Snow hidden beneath branches caused Emily to stumble, nearly falling into a drift. The girl caught her just in time, her hands freezing against Emily's icy uniform. She gasped, glancing around for any other obstacles. Shadow barked once sharply, warning of a thin patch of ice ahead, his amber eyes glowing with urgency. Hours felt like days. The child's legs were burning, Emily's face pale and frosted, and the forest seemed endless. Panic threatened to overtake the girl, but she drew in a deep, shaky breath. Shadow pressed closer, guiding her small hands to steady Emily, a living compass of loyalty and focus. Then Emily drifted in and out of consciousness, lips murmuring weakly. The girl's heart broke. "Please, stay with me," she pleaded, pressing her tiny hands against the officer's chest, offering warmth and comfort. Shadow's low growl softened, his head resting protectively beside Emily, reminding the girl that even in near despair, they were not alone. Hope, fragile but alive, surged through the child. Every ounce of courage and trust they had built now mattered more than ever. Rescue had to come before the forest claimed them completely. The faint sound of sirens cut through the howling wind, distant but unmistakable. The little girl's heart leapt as she struggled to steady Emily in her arms. Shadow stiffened, ears pricked forward, alert to every approaching sound. Relief washed over her. Help was finally near. Through the swirling snow, headlights appeared, bright and cutting through the white haze. A team of emergency responders emerged, their voices shouting over the wind, coordinating stretchers and blankets. "Over here. We've got a woman down," one shouted, rushing toward the trio. The girl stepped back cautiously, allowing Shadow to remain close to Emily. The K9 sniffed the responders warily, but as they approached, their calm, authoritative tone reassured him. One paramedic knelt beside Emily, checking her pulse and vitals. "She's hypothermic and in shock, but stable enough to move," he said, voice urgent but composed. The little girl handed over her jacket to wrap Emily, tears streaming down her face. "You saved her," the lead medic murmured, noticing the child's bravery. Shadow barked softly, then nudged Emily, as if understanding that the danger had passed, but still guarding his handler. They lifted Emily carefully onto a stretcher, working against the uneven, slippery snow. The girl followed closely, holding Shadow's leash as he stayed alert, scanning the surrounding forest for any further threats. Every second felt tense, but the professionalism of the rescue team reassured her as the ambulance doors closed. Emily's weak hand reached for the little girl, gripping it briefly. "Thank you," she whispered, eyes filled with gratitude. Shadow leaned down, pressing his warm muzzle against Emily's shoulder. A silent promise of protection and loyalty. The girl watched as the vehicle disappeared into the distance, heart pounding, realizing the magnitude of what had just happened. Courage, teamwork, and the unbreakable bond between dog and human had turned a frozen nightmare into a story of survival and hope. The hospital room was warm, a stark contrast to the icy forest outside. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting soft stripes across the white sheets. Emily lay propped up slightly, blankets pulled tightly around her, her body still trembling from the cold and exertion. Shadow sat loyally by her side, tail wagging gently, his amber eyes calm and attentive. Emily blinked slowly, awareness returning. The little girl, bundled in a bright coat, stood nervously near the bed. "Hi," she whispered, voice small but steady. Emily's lips curved into a weak but genuine smile. You saved me," she said, voice hoarse. Tears formed in her eyes as she reached for the girl's hand. Shadow leaned forward, pressing his warm muzzle against Emily's shoulder, sensing the tension and relief in the room. The girl's eyes widened, realizing that the dog who had protected Emily in the forest was the same one now showing comfort. She gently patted his head, a silent thank you for his loyalty and bravery. Doctors and nurses bustled quietly around the room, monitoring vitals and providing warmth and medication. One nurse looked at the girl, awe in her eyes. "You were very brave," she said softly. The girl's lips trembled, but she nodded, understanding that her courage had made a real difference. Emily spoke again, voice steadier now. "I don't know how I can ever thank you," she murmured. The girl shook her head. "You don't have to. I just wanted to help." Shadow nudged her gently, as if agreeing. For the first time in hours, the room felt calm. The officer's pulse had stabilized, color returned to her cheeks, and warmth filled the space. Shadow rested beside the bed, ever watchful, ever protective. The little girl sat on the edge of the chair, exhausted but proud, knowing that their combined courage had turned a frozen tragedy into a story of survival and hope. Days later, the hospital was quieter, filled with a warm, gentle light that contrasted sharply with the chaos of the snowy forest. Emily sat in a wheelchair by the window, wrapped in blankets, her hand gently stroking Shadow's thick fur. The K9 rested his head on her lap, amber eyes calm and wise, as if he understood the gravity of the ordeal they had survived. The little girl stood nearby, holding a small notebook she had used to track their journey through the forest. Her eyes were wide with awe, reflecting a mix of pride and disbelief. "I can't believe we made it," she whispered softly, almost to herself. Shadow tilted his head toward her, a soft whine escaping as though confirming her bravery. Emily looked up, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "You were so courageous," she said, voice still soft but stronger now. "You saved both of us, me and Shadow. Without you, none of this would have been possible." The girl shook her head, humility evident in her tiny frame. I just did what I had to," she murmured, her words carrying weight far beyond her age. Mark Jensen, who had arrived to check on the aftermath, stepped quietly into the room. He observed the three of them, a little girl, a K-9, and a rescued officer, and could see the unspoken bond that had formed. Courage isn't about size or age, he said. It's about heart. And all of you showed more heart than I've ever seen. Shadow lifted his head slightly, letting out a soft, contented bark. Emily smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Sometimes, she whispered, it takes the smallest hands to save the biggest hearts. The little girl smiled, leaning down to hug Shadow gently. Outside the window, snowflakes drifted softly, a reminder of the peril they had faced and overcome. And in that quiet, warm hospital room, everyone understood one undeniable truth: bravery, loyalty, and compassion can turn even the coldest, harshest moments into stories of hope, survival, and the enduring bond between human and dog. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because courage and love are stories worth sharing.